these are going to be my memories with the Nintendo DS and the Nintendo 3DS, and I guess everything in between. In a way, it's going to be me talking about my entire history of being a gamer, sort of off the cuff. Video games are not something I necessarily talk about all the time. I'm not like the biggest gamer. It's a hobby that I kind of have off on the side, I guess. Sometimes I'm into games, sometimes I'm not. But I kind of want to talk about it from the beginning so I could kind of have like a reference point on like my YouTube channel, but also I just want to talk about it because it's been something that is I've been tossing and turning around in my mind for a while. Uh, so it's gonna kind of be my history and a bunch of little random stories and anecdotes in between that I think are important. So this all starts. I think it was, well, I mean, based on looking online, uh, it was probably the Christmas of 2010. This was the first video game system I ever received. This is the my childhood DSi XL. This is the Super Mario Bros. 25th anniversary edition of the system. It's still in really decent shape. Obviously, the stylus has been lost somewhere between 2010 and now. Um, but this was the first video game system I ever got. And I guess as a bit of backstory, I suppose, that my family was not really all that well off for the longest time, and I guess we really aren't now, all things considered. I mean, we kind of are, but we're definitely not like we're like lower middle class, I guess, even though like me and my mom work good jobs and stuff. Like we don't really live an extravagant lifestyle, and I've never been used to uh, like having certain luxuries in my life. And one of those luxuries growing up was video games. That it wasn't until I was like a preteen that I received a DS, and like that was the first time I had a personal video game system. Prior to that, it was mostly kind of playing flash games on and off. I didn't really spend too much time with my cousins who did have like PlayStations and stuff because I've never been that close with my extended family. I was the oldest sibling, and if I wasn't into video games, and uh, you know, everybody else really wasn't, I suppose. So, like, it was just something I kind of grew up sort of away from, I guess. And I was thinking about it the other day that, like, growing up, like, a lot of the kids I hung out with, I didn't remember any of them having a video game system, which was kind of strange. Maybe it was just like the crowd I hung around with, or maybe it just wasn't as common as I thought it was. I don't know. It was just kind of weird. Like I never remembered like sitting down and playing like GameCube or Wii or anything, or like PlayStation 2 growing up. It was mostly just like playing with action figures and stuff like that, and occasionally going to an arcade and playing a random little game or something. Like I was familiar with arcade games. Like my dad was pretty big into like a lot of the Namco classics and stuff, but um, I wasn't like that familiar with video games beyond playing flash games and stuff like whatever I found on Miniclip and random little online stuff like Club Penguin. Um, but yeah, so the Nintendo DSi XL was the first video game system I got. This particular version came packaged with Mario Kart DS, which I have somewhere over here off to the side. I have my little stack of physical games here that I'm gonna kind of go through. Um, Mario Kart DS, dude, like this game right here, like it came pre-packaged with this particular version of the Super Mario Bros. 25th Anniversary DSi XL, and like I played the heck out of this game. Um, and I guess it's also kind of important for me to mention, I suppose, that like with the DS, and I think like a lot of other people, I get the impression that they were more into video games than I was, and like I guess this kind of stems from like where I started with video games. Like when I got the DS, I didn't know much about video games. I just kind of knew like what I got and what was presented to me through advertisements and stuff like that, or whatever I would kind of see naturally out in the like at a video rental store or something like that, which I'll get into. And I was thinking about this the other day as well. Like when I had a when I got the DS, like I it never occurred to me to look for any of this stuff online. We had really poor internet at home at the time, if we were even online at all. Like I remember going to the library, but most of the time I would just go play flash games or something like that. Uh, but I never thought to like look for video game stuff. It just wasn't on my mind. I don't know. It was kind of weird. But Mario Kart DS is a game I played the heck out of. I don't even know how long I've played this game, but I know it like the back of my hand. Um, Curiously enough, I never unlocked everything in this game. I never unlocked Rob. I think that was the only thing I didn't get. Um, but I really love this game, and this one's like, if I feel nostalgia for anything, it's Mario Kart DS. Like every other Mario Kart that came before or after, I guess, like it doesn't feel right. Like Mario Kart DS has such a tight control response, and it just feels right to me. Just doing the little mini turbos and stuff like that. They're and alongside like the little low poly 3D models and stuff like that. It just feels and looks so right to me. And like later on, I would get Mario Kart 7. Later, even further on into the future, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on the Switch, and like those are fun games and they're visually like stunning, especially Deluxe. But like they just feel a little bit different to me. They play a little bit more loose, and something about that just never sat right with me. It's just been Mario Kart DS that is the game that I grew up playing, and I like was one of the only DS games I had for a very long time. So like this was all I really knew. Another game that I got pretty early on was Lego Star Wars: The Complete Saga right here. This was the first game I ever beat that like a game that had a story and I saw it to completion. Because at the time, obviously, I was a big Star Wars and Lego fan. Um, I don't I didn't know this was on any other systems. This was just the only system that I had it on, and I played it and I had fun. Uh, I don't know. It was like a somewhat of a revelation to know that games had a story and I could see it to completion. It was kind of cool. Uh, some other interesting oddities, I suppose, um, are these two titles right here. And this is kind of what I talk about when I mention um, like me not having much of a reference point for video games, because like I didn't really have any friends growing up. It wasn't until a little bit later that I met someone who was into video games and kind of imparted their knowledge onto me. But at this time, like I said, it was weird that it just never occurred to me that I went on Google on a library computer and searched for like best DS games or something like that. Maybe it was because buying video games was not something that we necessarily even did all that much. Like for the longest time, I maybe had like two games. It was just the game that came with my system, maybe another random game that I got for my birthday. Like I said, we were not necessarily living with like a lot of money at the time in my family. Like it just wasn't like it was a different time in my life. Um, and even getting a handheld video game system was like kind of mind-boggling that I could even get something like that. Obviously, we didn't have any home consoles at the time. It wasn't until a couple years later that we got the Wii Family Edition, the black one that came with New Super Mario Bros. Wii, uh, which I still have somewhere floating around. I plan to get back into that system. Uh, but like even when we got that, it was just kind of strange because like I never knew what a home video game console was. For like I knew what it was conceptually, but like I just wasn't used to like the act of plugging the system in, getting a controller in my hand and sitting down in front of the television and just like playing a game or something. It was just a really foreign concept to me that I even when we got the Wii, we kind of played Wii Sports and stuff, but maybe a couple of levels of New Super Mario Bros. And maybe that was it, and then it collected dust. That it was just a different experience to playing like flash games on a computer or a handheld, which was a much more like personal activity that you kind of like go in your room and sit in your bed, uh, or like lay on your belly, play some DS games. Uh, or something like that, or go to the the computer room or wherever the room the computer was and kind of play games off to the side. Whereas playing games on a TV, it's like you're in the living room and then people are gonna like walk in and be like, "Hey, I want to watch TV" or something like that. Or I would probably feel bad that like I'm playing games or something for a while and my parents can't watch TV because I'm hogging the only TV in the house. But anyways, these games I find it curious that I stumbled upon them, uh, sort of like naturally, I suppose, that we would go to a local a video store called Family Video, which is similar in concept to Blockbuster, probably just in different regions of the United States, I guess, different popularity levels. That I just find it interesting looking at these in retrospect that I knew what Zelda was. I have a really distinct memory of seeing The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess on the Wii and really wanting to play it because the cover looked really striking. And I guess through advertisements or just like osmosis of knowing what Nintendo stuff kind of was through pop culture, like I knew what The Legend of Zelda was. I knew the character in the box, his name was Zelda, and I knew I wanted to play that because it had a cool wolf on in like a kind of like a shiny foil-ish cover or whatever. Like you kind of like look at it, it's cool, it looks premium. You flip it over, it kind of looks mature and dark. It's rated T. It's not an M-rated game, so like I could get away with it, right? Like, I'm mature for my age. I can convince my parents that they could rent this T-rated game. But like I was mentioning before, that like I didn't want to hog the living room TV or whatever, just playing games, and it just felt kind of like intrusive and maybe a little embarrassing. I decided not to, but I also saw this other game, The Legend of Zelda Spirit Tracks, at the Family Video rental store. So I rented this game a couple times. This is one I bought a couple years after the fact. This was the first Legend of Zelda game I ever played, and for a while and I never got far in it, obviously, because one, it was rented, and two, I didn't really know what I was doing, and I didn't play it all that often, I guess. Um, it kind of informed what I thought about Zelda for a while, but I knew what it was. I knew what these games were, and I thought this was cool. I really like just driving the train around, not really knowing what I was doing, but like just kind of messing around with the systems and stuff, and like walking around the overworld as Link and seeing the graphics, which were kind of impressive for me at the time. Like it, I was coming from just seeing a constrained world within like Mario Kart DS that you kind of really only see like a limited field of view, um, like Lego Star Wars, which was like blocky and Lego-y and stuff like that. But this one looked really cool. It had a stylized art style, um, and I never had that impression that the controls were weird, or like what Toon Link was or whatever. Like this wasn't as good as the other games because like this was the first one I've tried. I didn't know what the heck Zelda was. I didn't even know Ocarina of Time existed. I didn't know like what the first game even looked like. Heck, if I knew what a Nintendo Entertainment System was. But this was kind of cool. Like just playing this and like thinking about it in retrospect, it's kind of uh, cool for me. You know what? Maybe it was in one of these, like these little booklets. I think these came in a lot of DS games. I distinctly remember this two-tone one where it's like, if you like this game, you will certainly like these other ones. I remember the Mario and Luigi one, and maybe this is where I found out about Spirit Tracks, that I was flipping through one of these in another game and I saw Phantom Hourglass or Spirit Tracks, and I kind of saw that and I was like, hey, maybe I should check that out. Um, that was kind of interesting. And then another one I distinctly remember renting from the video store was Professor Layton and the Diabolical Box, because I've always really liked puzzle games. Some of my favorite games are puzzle games like Portal 2 and stuff like that. I just like messing around with like you know, different brain teasers, I guess. And this one was like it's puzzles, but there's also a little story. I don't really remember too much about it. I just remember playing it. I probably played it for like an hour, all things considered. Like it probably wasn't you know, as much of like a staple in my video game rotation at the time or anything like that. But it was one that I distinctly remember like renting and like not really knowing what Professor Layton even was, but I just saw it and I'm like, I'd give it a shot. It looks kind of interesting. So that was kind of like the end of my. I'm just like cycling through my games off screen over here. But that was kind of like the end of my time with the DS because it was after this that like I kind of fell out of video games, which is something that's happened to me multiple times in my life. Like I said, I've never been like a huge gamer. It's been something that is kind of in the back burner for my whole life. And I guess like I sort of moved on to other things. I started getting more into PC gaming. I discovered like Minecraft and Team Fortress 2 and stuff like that, and I spent more time getting into those. And the DS kind of just sat there. Like I put it on my headboard, and obviously it's still in pretty good condition. The screens in here, like they have screen protectors on, so it's practically like in as good condition as I could want it to. And I still play it pretty regularly now. I appreciate older systems more and stuff like that, and I'm more into video games. But it just kind of sat there for a while, and I find it interesting, like this little dipping my toes into the pool of video games, sort of untainted by a lot of like online discussions and whatever's in pop culture and stuff like that. Like I didn't read any video game magazines. I didn't really have any friends who had a DS until much later, um, or like at least like I wouldn't interact with the people who were into video games. Like I didn't really take my DS like everywhere. Like I didn't take it to school or anything. I just kind of maybe played it at home once in a while. So like this was kind of all I knew, and it's like an interesting little sampling platter of like different titles that I that helped inform like the foundation of what I thought video games were for a while. It wasn't until later, like I mentioned, when I got into middle school that I met some people that had a pretty strong influence on me, that like I still think about pretty often, and I guess that's like a can of worms that I'm not ready to approach like fully telling the story about, I guess, like my middle school era, because that's like probably the most important story that I have yet to tell, and I'm gonna briefly touch on certain aspects of it in this video. So I guess there's gonna be a little bit of lore, and it all starts with Pokemon Soul Silver, or just Pokemon in general. That there was a guy, and like maybe other people have like a similar story to this, but mine starts a little bit differently. That we met sort of in like a weird situation, I guess. That it wasn't like we met because of like a mutually shared interest, but we were kind of brought together uh, by what I can only describe as fate. And like we didn't really know each other that well or what our interests were. We were both like nerds, geeks. We were into weird stuff. Like we were into YouTube videos and like video games and cartoons and stuff when that wasn't that cool anymore in middle school, where people were playing Call of Duty and uh, having girlfriends and stuff like that. We were like, nah, dude, we're gonna go home and watch cartoons. Uh, Play some dumb flash games on school computers after school, stuff like that. Um, but this guy was a huge Nintendo guy, and that was because he had an older brother who was like 10 years older than him that grew up in like a completely different era of video games than we were, and he imparted a lot of that knowledge onto his younger brother, who was the guy that later became one of my best friends. Probably the last best friend I ever had. Um, Maybe the only best friend I ever had. And this guy, like, he knew everything from the Nintendo Entertainment System until like whatever was current at the time, which was like the Wii and GameCube and stuff like that. Later on, the Wii U, I should say, and that was. I remember when the Wii U came out because I went over to his house and we played Nintendo Land, and it was like really fun. And then like that was it. Like that was the last time I knew what a Wii U was for a while because I never got one. Obviously, we didn't have enough money to get one, but I remember playing it uh, pretty shortly after it released at this guy's house. But he was a huge Nintendo guy. He was the one who eventually taught me a lot about video games. But the one franchise he was the most passionate about was Pokemon. And this is actually the copy that he gave me. He had a brand new sealed copy of Pokemon Soul Silver that he gave to me because he wanted to get me into Pokemon. Eventually, I guess he wanted us to battle and stuff like that. But unfortunately, that never happened due to circumstances outside of both of our controls, I suppose. Here's the game. Here's the Pokewalker. The the cartridge is still in my DS. Unfortunately, I never got too far into Soul Silver since, like, as much as as much as he wanted me to get into Pokemon at the time, and as much as like I might have wanted to, it just wasn't something that I was really receptive to at the time. It wasn't until a little bit later that I got into Pokemon White uh, that like I actually understood like the appeal of Pokemon and stuff like that. But like it wasn't yeah, like this gift that he gave me was something that also too that I didn't realize like was so meaningful until maybe later afterwards. Not because of the monetary value of like, oh look, I own Pokemon Soul Silver complete in box, lol. But like the fact that he gave me like this game that meant a lot to him, and he wanted me to get into it, like that's like the type of thing that you don't. It doesn't really leave that much of an impact you at the time, like as a kid. It's not something that you realize until later when you grow up, or a couple years after the fact, even that like the significance of a moment like that, like it sinks in and you realize the gravity of such a like such a seemingly innocent action of just like giving someone a video game, but then you realize like what this video game meant to this guy and like all the circumstances surrounding it and stuff like that. Um, this is a game that I know I have to finish one day for like for personal reasons. I think also because it is a good Pokemon game, and I want to finally finish a Pokemon game that I've never done, even though I've played a lot of them. I think it's just one of those things that since I never grew up with it, I I didn't really have like I don't have that same connection to it that a lot of other people might. That I know Pokemon is good. I have fun playing it, and there's like certain times like where I'll slip into a Pokemon mood, and I'm like, all right, I'm just playing Pokemon, and like I don't get too deep into it, but I have a lot of fun with it. And then that's about it. That's like the extent of my experience with Pokemon. And then after like a week or two, then I'm on to something else. But eventually, I need to return back to this title because it's like such a key moment of my history as a video game enjoyer that you know I, I I need to get around to finishing this one day. But this is such a cool box though, and the Pokewalker, I remember using this. I thought this was like the coolest thing ever. I think it needs a new battery though. So there's that. That's Pokemon Soul Silver. Later on, I would explore Pokemon a little bit more on my own terms, but a lot of it was intrinsically tied to that one memory and that one experience of just having this guy who was really into Pokemon and wanting to like he wanted to get me into it, and I was receptive to it, and like to a certain extent, like I wanted to learn. And I remember like in class and stuff, he would like he would draw like a little diagrams and stuff and be like these are like these are the type affinities and stuff like that. These are like what types are weak to what types. And at the time, like I hadn't touched a Pokemon game, so I was just absorbing everything like that he was saying, but I didn't have too much of a basis for understanding. So it was more like going in one year, going out the other year. A couple of the titles I picked up later on, uh, Pokemon White. This is like a reproduction case that I slipped whatever art was out here and I printed a new one. It's just whatever. Um, there's Pokemon White there, the copy that I got. That of course at video game stores they put the freaking price sticker on top of the actual like sticker that was originally on the cart, which is really annoying. So I got a couple of these from Etsy, I think, but I just haven't had the heart to put it on. I might just do it because this looks bad, dude. It's like these little plastic films just coming off it. I can't believe I can't forgive those video game stores for doing stuff like that. So that's Pokemon White, and then these are like actual copies. I picked this one up at Trader in Akihabara. Pokemon White 2 that I never got around to getting too far into. But this one's pretty cool. I remember when I picked it up, it had the previous kid saved still on it, so that's kind of an interesting thing. That I really like these like cartridge titles. That they just have the saves for whoever was playing it previously, and that's cool to pick up. And then I picked up Pokemon Pearl because it was a surprisingly decent deal when I picked it up. And yeah, I'm gonna hide that because it has the receipt and stuff in it like that. That's something that I've started to do, sort of naturally, I suppose. I don't know if any of these games have it. You know, everybody kind of does this. Like, you don't know why you start, but you just start putting the receipt into the video game case when you buy it secondhand. That's just something you start doing naturally, I think, or at least like if you're an autistic nerd. That was my brief little history with Pokemon, I suppose. Never got as into it as some people, but it's just something that is kind of been ever present in the back of my mind, just because like it has such a large presence on the Nintendo DS family of systems that it's almost unavoidable. So I do have a large number, or maybe not a large number, but maybe a humble collection of Nintendo DS games physically. Got a couple here. Some of these are reproduction cases, like 999. Like, I just had a random case where I picked up a dumb game or something like that I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to print out something. Because a lot of these games, you can only get them with cartridges, but I don't particularly mind all that much because then, you can just print something else out. Or I picked a couple of these up in Japan as well. Because I'm like, you know what, it's just new Super Mario Bros, dude. I can play this in Japanese easy. Another random little one right here. This is Trader. This is Lucky Star Drill. I saw this in the bargain bin, and I'm like, I don't know what the heck this is. It looks like a like Brain Age, but Lucky Star maybe. I don't know, dude. So I bought it just because it was really cheap. It was like 200 or 300 yen, and I'm like, screw it, I'm gonna check this out. This is at GBA actually, but it's in a DS case because, as you know, GBA games go up there. I'm not even sure. This is random paperwork or something, I don't know. And then the last one I have here, this is where I put my R4 card. But the R4 card is in this DS right here. This was actually my brother's DS Lite for a while, but he never was anywhere near as into video games as I was. And even then, I wasn't like a huge gamer, but I continued to be a gamer long after childhood, where he kind of hung up his hat prematurely, I guess. So this one was just, I just kind of adopted it because he didn't use it. So I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to start using this one. And I liked using the DS Lite a lot more, especially when I went to uni and I actually started getting back into games. And I was like, I'm not going to take my nice nostalgic DSi XL out. So I just started taking the DS Lite because this one's so easy to put in your pocket because it's small and compact. And it just like feels good, whereas the DSi XL is starting to get on the larger side, that it's a little bit uncomfortable to just put in your, like, the side of your jeans or something like that. Whereas this is like, it's like the size of, maybe a little bit bigger than your wallet, about the size of like a 2010 smartphone, I guess. Maybe a little bit thicker, but you kind of get the idea. The D's I've always preferred to have to carry around portably. Similar story to the 3DS, which I guess I could talk about a little bit. The 3DS was something I picked up a little bit later. I ended up having a bit of a gaming revolution later on, and when I started entering uni, that like I started watching more YouTube videos and stuff. I started watching more stuff about video games. The game that got me back into video games was Persona 5 when that dropped. I remember like getting that, and I got super into it. Because it was like obviously like it's deeply inspired by anime and has a lot of anime tropes in it, so it spoke to me on a deeper level. And after that, I was like, what's this Persona thing, by the way? and I started watching more stuff on YouTube, different video essays and retrospectives, and I just did my homework and I learned a lot about video games and stuff. So I started to get more into gaming, and I was like, you know what? There's something that I really missed out on, and it was the 3DS generation, because that was during the era where like I had hung up my DS temporarily, and I wasn't playing it anymore because I was into PC games. So this era sort of passed me by while I was doing other things. That I knew it existed, and I have a really distinct memory. It was the week when the 3DS came out initially, the original 3DS actually. And there was this guy that I knew, who was another like a part of the gang in middle school, kind of off on the side. He was, we were just a bunch of weird misfits, like the kind of kids that people made fun of, the kind of people who like they kind of smelled a little bit, the kind of people who played flash games and watched YouTube videos in the 2000s and like spoke in memes before speaking in memes was funny. Um, and wore like graphic T-shirts with video game characters and stuff on them. That was where I hung out. But like, I remember the guy who got this. Uh, he was like the coolest guy. The that first week when the 3DS came out, because he got a 3DS when it first came out, and I remember like me and a couple kids being like, "Holy crap, dude! What's is this the 3DS, the new system?" And at the time, like the 3DS came out, it was pretty expensive. It was like $250 or something like that, and that was before they did the whole like price cut and stuff like that. And then it started to receive more games, became popular. But he was a very early adopter of that system. He had the, I believe he had the black one, and it was just like something that he had during like a passing period at middle school. Uh, we would just like look at the system like just on the menu or something, and we would turn the 3D on and look at it and be like, "Oh my god, dude, it actually works." That's what 3D is, and it blew our mind. But I didn't have enough money to, or like my parents didn't have enough money to get a 3DS, and I don't remember any games that initially like caught my eye, and I guess that was one of the unfortunate things, that maybe if the 3DS had a stronger launch lineup, I would have been more interested, but that wasn't the case. Um, I didn't get one until much later on when this is the new 3DS XL. It's got the little nub thing right there. I got this one specifically because I really wanted to play Xenoblade Chronicles 3D, and I got it for Christmas in 2016 or 2017, I think. I don't remember specifically. Um, but that was after like learning to get into video games and stuff again, and I gained a greater appreciation for stuff, because in 2017, this is a whole tangent for another time, but I'm going to give you the long and short of it, I suppose. That it was after Persona 5 that I'm like, you know what, video games are pretty cool. And then I played a lot of Persona 3, never ended up beating it, but I played it. I actually emulated it on the PSP emulator on my phone, and I would play that all the time in uni, like just waiting for classes to start, because I would always show up early to classes, because like these there were like these massive lecture halls, and I didn't want to get there late, because then when you get there late, you have to sit next to other people, and you would have to be that person choosing to sit next to someone else. Whereas if you get there early, you kind of like pick wherever you want to sit, and then other people have that awkward a situation where they have to sit next to the weird guy versus the weird guy sitting next to them. So I flipped the tables like that. So I would just show up to class earlier than everybody else would, just sit on the floor, play Persona 3 Portable on my phone, and like just wait for lectures to start or whatever. But in the process of that, I got more into video games and started listening to the PCP podcast and stuff like that. I learned about a lot of the systems that existed before I even knew what video games were, and I remembered what the 3DS was. I wasn't. I still kind of am tangentially into JRPGs. I just don't really play them that much anymore. I like the idea of them more than anything else. So I'm like, I'm gonna play Xenoblade Chronicles 3D. So I asked my parents that I wanted a new Nintendo 3DS XL for my birthday, or for Christmas, I should say. A new 3DS XL. You know how hard that is, dude? Like, pretty much like every kid who asked their parents for a 3DS, or specifically the new 3DS, had like the like a heck of a time, uh, and I'm sure the parents did as well. But and so I salute all the GameStop and Target and Walmart employees out there who knew that the parents actually meant something. That if they're like, my kid wants a new Nintendo 3DS XL and a copy of Xenoblade Chronicles 3D. Uh, Imagine like what that's like the type of sentence that no one will say unless they actually know what they're talking about, or they're buying something stupid for their kid. But anyways, I picked this one up. I can remember distinctly playing Xenoblade Chronicles 3D and thinking it was cool, and then there was a specific fight very early on against like a mech or something that I just couldn't figure out the combat of. I'm not sure if I was probably just stupid, but the controls just didn't feel right on the 3DS, and I'm like, you know what, screw this. And then I ended up playing other games, and I never got around to finishing the game, Xenoblade Chronicles 3D, which I got somewhere over here. I got it right there. I never ended up playing that one, and by the time when I was interested in the game again, it received a definitive edition on Switch, which is significantly better in pretty much every regard. It's probably one of the nicest JRPGs I've ever looked at. It sounds amazing. It looks great. Um, I just haven't finished it yet because that's pretty much all these games. Even from the beginning, you can tell they're like I would pick up a game, I would play it for a little bit, and then I just would never finish it. And that wasn't something that I started to think about seriously until 2017. Like I said, when I started to get more into the games, and I decided to finish games that I actually liked a lot, like Persona 5, um, and then later on Kingdom Hearts, which was it's its own story. But if you want to know my story with Kingdom Hearts, sort of my fake nostalgia for it, I wrote a blog about Kingdom Hearts 2, which is something along the lines of I was always gonna like Kingdom Hearts 2, but that's a series I enjoy deeply. But anyways, 3DS is slowly becoming one of my favorite systems right now. I recently picked this one up right here. This Atomic Purple. Is it Atomic Purple? What is it called? Atomic Purple is like the N64 color. Midnight Purple. There we go. That's an even cooler color name. But I picked up the Midnight Purple 3DS because like I was playing this one, but similar story with the DSi XL. That this one is like it has memories. Like this is a system I had for a while, and this is I played Fire Emblem Awakening, Fire Emblem Fates on here, a couple other titles, and like I have some nostalgia for this one now. And I look back on it and I'm like, yeah, dude, playing this in like 2016, 2017, that was the stuff, man. Playing just like laying in bed in uni in the dorms and playing this dumb little handheld. Uh, I just decided to get another one because I'm like, you know what? I don't want this one to break. I want to have this one forever, and that's kind of where I feel with this DSi XL. Like whenever I take it out, I'm taking it out with like gloves on, sort of, like figuratively speaking. That I would just like I'll grab it delicately and be like, this is a system that like it this defines me as a person, and like I don't want to mash the buttons too hard on it. I don't want to like scratch the screen with the stylus, so I got like screen protectors and stuff on it. So I got another system like as a beater, I suppose, and that's what the DS Lite is, and that's what this new 3DS is. And this one actually is modded and stuff like that. It's all tricked out. You know, it's got that 128 gigabyte SD card loaded with games and stuff. That's been something I've been playing more. I recently beat Ocarina of Time 3D on that system right there, and you know it was a great time. Like I'm getting back into video games again. It's pretty chill. Something I didn't mention that I've just been like staring at in my periphery this whole time, and I realized I should have talked about it. Is this little M&M's tin, and this is where I would just throw the DS games into. Obviously, like I was pretty decent as a kid in terms of like taking care of my stuff. As like my DSi XL, it doesn't have any like scuffs. I never dropped it, or like dropped it enough to damage it really. I think there's like one section that it might have like a little bit of discoloration or something like that. There's some maybe minor scratches on the top. There's screen protectors here and stuff like that. So the screens are good. But like I would actually keep the cases for my games because I didn't have that many. But what I would do is I would like get the game, pop the cartridge out, throw the cartridge into my little tin, and then I would like stash these or stack them on like my headboard or something like that, or my bookshelf. So then whenever I was going on a card trip or something like that, I'd just flip this bad boy open, and say like, yeah, bro, we're playing Xenoblade Chronicles 3D today or something along those lines, or Lego Star Wars. So that's where I would stash my video games. But yeah, I don't know. Those are kind of some memories with the DS, I guess. It's a system that I have a lot of emotions toward, a lot of feelings and nostalgia, and a lot of stories to tell about. Even though I feel like I haven't really even dipped my toes entirely into the system's library. That there's a lot of stuff that I just haven't played yet. That even I own right now that I just haven't started. Like New Super Mario Bros. Is one of those games that like everybody had and I haven't played. Another one, maybe not as iconic on the DS, but uh, Kirby Superstar. No, it's Ultra Super Deluxe. Excuse me. 999 is another one. Like I mentioned, the Pokemon games. When I was in Akihabara recently, I picked up Idolmaster Dearly Stars, Idolmaster DS. These cheeky guys come with a little thing. It's like a little card. It's one of those like Weiss Schwartz or whatever. Something back there. Yeah, there's like a lot of DS stuff that I just haven't really gotten back into, but like over the past couple years, I've just never stopped thinking about the DS, I guess. It's a system that's been with me the longest time, and it's a system that I just maybe never appreciated as much in the moment because I didn't really have context for it. But as I got older and as I explored video games more, it developed from, just kind of like a thing that I did to pass time to being an actual hobby or a passion. Like my love for the system blossomed, and now it's like I fully appreciate it. And when I think about the DS now, I'm able to maybe feel kind of the same nostalgia that people have for stuff that they had growing up. That people are nostalgic for, like the N64 or stuff like that, or like the Super Nintendo. Uh, and I kind of feel that with the DS now. Like if I feel nostalgia for anything, it's with this system and the games and the really specific low poly, no anti-aliasing 3D models that these games had, like in Spirit Tracks or Super Mario 64 DS or something like that. Like those really distinctly low poly models that look kind of funny, but they're really charming. And when I look at that, it just is recognizable. I pick up the system, it just feels so right in my hand. Playing it, just holding it like this, just it was 3DS, but just holding it and like system in left hand, stylus in right hand, and just like playing a game. I feel like the coolest guy when I'm like that. I just bust out the stylus. It feels like it's an elegant way to play a video game, but it's also really fun. And it has such a variety and such a massive library to just sink like hours and hours and days and years into that it's just really something special. And I just wanted to, I guess, ramble a little bit about my memories with the DS, and because it kind of all started here. That my even knowing what video games are and like my basis for understanding games, my sort of unique perspective, I guess, just coming from a place of kind of just discovering a lot of these things on my own or through whatever Nintendo was marketing me at the time, and not having that much money as a kid, and or like the family with the means to buy a lot of these things, and just kind of having fun with what I had and looking back on it and watching the pieces all fall into place. That's maybe why I feel so strongly now about the 3DS, or like why I have a lot of fun playing the Switch and why I care deeply about handheld games and maybe not so much like home console games because I grew up with the dual screens in my hands and the console in my hands in the back of a car, not with a controller in my hand and in a sofa or anything. That's kind of where I came from. But anyways, this has gone on long enough. Thanks for listening to me share some stories about my DS memories.